Today, you won't only follow an incredible journey of self-discovery and adventure, but you'll also improve your English through listening. Today's story is about a young woman named Emma who dared to leave the comfort of her small town in search of something bigger. She took a leap of faith into the unknown, but what she discovered along the way might just surprise you. Stay tuned as we dive in. Hello, and welcome to English Learning Podcast. I'm Jack, and this our first episode of Learn English with a Story. Let's get started. There was a small town called Willowbrook, nestled between rolling hills and vast green fields. It was a peaceful place where everyone knew each other by name, and life seemed to move at a steady, predictable pace. The kind of town where nothing really changed, and everyone was content with their daily routines. But for one person, life in Willowbrook felt too small. Her name was Emma, and she had always dreamed of something more. She worked at the local bookstore, a cozy little shop tucked in the corner of Main Street. It smelled of old paper and adventure. Rows upon rows of books filled the shelves, each one telling stories of far-off lands, magical creatures, and daring heroes. Every day, Emma would spend hours surrounded by these books, lost in the worlds within their pages. She would imagine what it would be like to live a life full of excitement and discovery, far from the quiet streets of Willowbrook. But despite her dreams, Emma never had the courage to leave. There was always something holding her back. The comfort of the familiar, the safety of routine, and the deep, gnawing fear of the unknown. She often wondered what it would be like to step out of her comfort zone, but every time she thought about it, doubt would creep in. What if she failed? What if the world outside wasn't as kind as the one she knew? For years, Emma had lived this way, content but restless, dreaming of a life she wasn't sure she could have. She had friends, a job she enjoyed, and a family that loved her. Yet there was a part of her that longed for more. She couldn't help but feel that there was a bigger world waiting for her just beyond the horizon. But what was she waiting for? One rainy afternoon, Emma was organizing books in the store when she stumbled upon something unusual. A journal, old and worn, tucked away in a forgotten corner of the shop. It was a leather-bound book, the kind that looked like it had seen years of adventures. The pages were yellowed and the edges frayed. There was no title on the cover, but something about it drew Emma in. She opened the journal carefully, and as she read, she felt a spark of excitement she hadn't felt in years. The journal belonged to a woman named Lily, who had once lived in a town much like Willowbrook, but unlike Emma, Lily had taken a different path. She had left her small town behind, packed a bag, and set off into the unknown. The journal was filled with stories of her travels, her triumphs, her fears, and the incredible people she had met along the way. Lily wrote about the challenges she faced, the doubts she had, and the moments of joy that made the journey worth it. As Emma read Lily's words, she felt as if they were speaking directly to her. Lily had written about the very same fears and uncertainties Emma had always felt, but she had chosen to face them. She had chosen to follow her dreams, to take the leap, and to embrace the adventure that awaited her. The more Emma read, the more she felt inspired. Lily's story was not one of perfection or smooth sailing. It was a story of courage in the face of fear, of stepping into the unknown with nothing but hope and determination. Emma realized that the world outside Willowbrook wasn't a place to fear. It was a place to discover, and Lily had shown her that it was possible to live the kind of life she had always dreamed of. By the time Emma finished reading the journal, the rain had stopped, and the evening sun was casting a warm glow through the windows of the bookstore. She sat there for a long time, deep in thought. She had always believed that there was a reason for staying in Willowbrook, that she was meant to live a quiet, predictable life. But after reading Lily's journal, Emma wasn't so sure anymore. The next morning, Emma woke up with a new sense of clarity. She knew that her time in Willowbrook had come to an end. She couldn't keep living a life that didn't fulfill her. She had to go out and find her own adventure, just like Lily had. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be comfortable, but it was time for Emma to take the leap. She packed a bag, left a note for her family, and walked out of the bookstore with a determined smile on her face. She didn't know exactly where she was going or what would happen next, but she knew one thing for sure. She was ready for whatever came her way. The road ahead was uncertain, but Emma no longer feared the unknown. She had seen what was possible when someone dared to dream, and now it was her turn. She was about to embark on a journey that would change her life forever. Episode 2: The Road Ahead. The morning after Emma decided to leave Willowbrook, she stood at the edge of the small town, looking down the long, winding road that stretched into the unknown. The weight of her decision settled in her chest, but it was no longer a burden. There was a sense of freedom that came with it, a promise of discovery. She took a deep breath and began walking. At first, everything felt surreal. The familiar sights of Willowbrook slowly disappeared behind her, and Emma couldn't help but look back once or twice. It felt strange to be leaving the place that had been her home for so long, but each step away from it felt lighter, as if the road ahead was slowly opening up to her. As she walked, Emma began to think about all the things she had left behind, her family, her friends, the bookstore she had worked at for years. She knew she would miss them, but she also knew that this journey wasn't just about escaping, it was about finding herself. She had spent so much time being the person everyone expected her to be, and now it was time to figure out who she was when no one was around to define her. By midday, Emma reached a small village. It wasn't much different from Willowbrook, quiet, with only a few people walking about, their lives seemingly as predictable as those back home. Emma stopped at a small cafe and ordered a simple lunch. As she sat by the window sipping her coffee, she overheard a conversation between two older women at the table next to hers. "Have you heard? There's a young woman traveling through the country trying to see the world," one woman said. "They say she's brave, setting off without any plan, just going wherever the wind takes her." The other woman nodded. "It's a strange thing to do, really. I couldn't imagine living like that." Emma felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of her was proud that someone had noticed the kind of journey she was on, but another part of her felt a sense of doubt creeping in. Was she really brave, or was she just running away from something? The voice in her head whispered that maybe this wasn't such a good idea after all. After lunch, Emma decided to take a walk through the village to clear her mind. She wandered through the cobblestone streets, passing by people who seemed content with their simple lives. The more she walked, the more she felt like an outsider. They all seemed so sure of their place in the world, while Emma felt like she was still searching for hers. Just as she was about to head out of the village, she met an old man sitting by a fountain. His face was weathered and his hands trembled slightly as he held a cane. He looked up at Emma with a kind smile and nodded. "You seem lost, my dear," he said gently. Emma hesitated for a moment, unsure how to respond. "I'm not lost. I'm just on a journey," she finally said, trying to sound confident. The old man's eyes sparkled. "Ah, I see. A journey is not always about the places you go, but about what you find within yourself. Many people travel the world, but few actually know what they are searching for." Emma sat down beside him. She had no idea why she felt drawn to speak with him, but something in his presence made her feel at ease. "I've been traveling for a while now," she said, "but sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing. It feels like everyone else has their life figured out, and I'm just wandering aimlessly." The old man chuckled softly. "Wandering is part of the journey, my dear. Sometimes you need to lose yourself before you can truly find who you are." He paused for a moment, as if collecting his thoughts. "You see, many people spend their whole lives in one place thinking they are safe. But safety can keep you trapped. It's only when you take risks, when you step into the unknown, that you truly begin to live. You may not know where this road will take you, but that's the beauty of it. The road ahead is where your story begins. Emma sat in silence for a moment, his words sinking in. She had been so focused on the uncertainty of her journey, so afraid of making the wrong choice. But perhaps the uncertainty wasn't something to fear. It was part of the adventure. The old man smiled. Sometimes the best advice comes from unexpected places. Just remember, the road ahead may not always be easy, but it will always lead you somewhere new. Trust the journey and trust yourself. As Emma stood to leave, the old man's words echoed in her mind. For the first time since leaving Willowbrook, she felt a sense of peace. She didn't have to have everything figured out. The journey was enough. Each step was a discovery, each moment a chance to learn and grow. That night, Emma set up camp by the side of the road, her mind filled with new thoughts and a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer worried about having a plan, about knowing exactly where she was going. The journey was unfolding before her, and that was enough. The next morning, Emma woke early, packed her things, and continued down the road. She didn't know where the path would lead, but she no longer felt the need to have all the answers. She was ready for whatever came next. As she walked into the horizon, the world seemed full of possibilities. And for the first time, Emma felt truly free. Episode 3, The Return. The road ahead was endless. Emma had walked through forests, crossed rivers, and passed through villages she would never forget. She had met so many different people, each with their own story, each with their own journey. Every encounter had added something new to her life, some lessons, some challenges, and most importantly, a growing sense of self. But after months of wandering, something began to change inside Emma. She had spent so much time seeking answers from the world around her that she realized she hadn't truly stopped to ask herself the most important question. What did she want now? One evening, while sitting atop a hill watching the sunset, Emma found herself lost in thought. Her bag, once so heavy with uncertainty, now felt light. The journey had taught her so much, but she was starting to realize that what she was really searching for wasn't something to find out there in the world. It was something to rediscover within herself. The wind whispered through the trees, and for the first time in a long while, Emma felt at peace. She had changed. She had faced her fears, let go of her doubts, and opened herself up to the world in ways she never thought possible. But now, it was time to go home. Emma had always thought that her life in Willowbrook was too small, too safe. But now she understood something different. Home wasn't about the size of the town or the familiarity of the streets. Home was where her heart felt at rest, And at this moment, her heart was telling her it was time to return. The decision wasn't easy. She had left Willowbrook to find adventure, to discover herself, but now it was clear her adventure had taken her full circle. She had learned what she needed to learn, and now it was time to bring those lessons back to the place where her journey had begun. The next day, Emma packed her things and set off toward Willowbrook. Her heart was full of mixed emotions. There was excitement, yes, but also a sense of uncertainty. How would she be received? Would she still feel the same way about the life she had left behind? As she approached the familiar streets of her hometown, Emma was surprised by the sense of comfort that washed over her. It was as if the town had been waiting for her return, not to be the same person who had left, but as someone new, someone who had learned to see the beauty in the ordinary, to appreciate the simple things that life had to offer. When she reached her house, Emma paused for a moment. She didn't need to rush inside. Instead, she stood in the doorway, taking in the sight of her old home. She had always thought it was too small, too quiet, but now she saw it in a new light. This was the place where her roots were planted, where her story had started. Emma went inside, and her family greeted her with warm embraces. They had missed her, of course, but there was something different in the way they looked at her now. They could see the change in her, the confidence in her step, the light in her eyes. She was no longer just Emma from Willowbrook. She was someone who had traveled the world, who had faced her fears and come back stronger. And now she was ready to share that strength with those she loved. But Emma didn't want to just go back to her old life. She had learned that there was more to living than simply going through the motions. She wanted to make a difference, to share the lessons she had learned with others who might be feeling just as lost as she had once felt. She reopened the bookstore, but this time it was different. The walls that once held only books now held stories, stories of her journey, stories of the people she had met, and stories of the lessons that had shaped her into who she was. Emma knew that her adventure wasn't over. It had just taken on a new form. One day, a young woman came into the bookstore, her eyes full of the same uncertainty Emma had once felt. She looked around at the shelves, unsure of where to begin. Emma walked up to her, offering a warm smile. "Looking for something specific?" she asked. The young woman shook her head. "I don't know. I just feel lost." Emma nodded, understanding. "I think I have something that might help," she said. She walked over to the shelf and pulled out a journal, the very same journal she had found on her journey all those months ago. The journal that had inspired her to leave Willowbrook and embark on the adventure of a lifetime. This, Emma said, handing the journal to the young woman, is where it all started for me. The young woman took the journal in her hands, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Thank you," she whispered, and Emma could see the spark of something new beginning to ignite inside her. As the young woman left the store, Emma felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Her journey had brought her home, but it had also brought her a new purpose. She was no longer just a traveler on the road. She was now a guide for others, helping them find their own paths, just as she had found hers. Emma sat down in the bookstore, a quiet smile on her face. The road she had walked had been long and uncertain, but it had led her exactly where she needed to be. And for the first time, she was sure of one thing. She had found her place in the world. And so Emma's story continued, not in distant lands, but in the hearts of those she inspired. The road ahead was still full of possibilities, but she no longer had to walk it alone. And that's the end of our story with Emma for today. If you enjoyed it and found it helpful, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and leave us a comment with your thoughts. Your support helps us keep going and bring you the best content. Thanks for your time, and see you in the next episode.